Yo, what's up, y'all? It's Cohen back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I review the NBA games from the night. We're going to go ahead and get into it. I do want to preface this video with saying I'm not going to go over a lot of the games from tonight because there were just a ton of blowouts. So let me go through and list some of those blowouts for you. Rockets Celtics, which is the one blowout I will be talking about. Timberwolves Pelicans, Timberwolves blowing out the Pelicans. Pacers winning by 32 against the Bulls, which was weird. The Bucks were up by nearly 50 points on the Magic and ended up winning by 31. So, just a couple blowouts. Like I said, I'm not going to be going over those. But the game, like I mentioned, the one blowout I do want to go over is the Rockets versus the Celtics. And I want to talk about the Rockets. I have not talked about the Rockets very much so far this season on this channel because they are bad. But the problem is they have now become so bad, so historically bad, that I have to talk about them because it's crazy what's happening right now in Houston. They're kind of a disaster at the moment. It's a team that some people thought could make a play-in push to start the season. I personally had them, I think it was 14th in the West behind OKC and right above San Antonio. But they have been horrible to start the season. They're 1-16. If I did my math right, this is like the 6th worst start in NBA history record-wise. I might be wrong on that, but I'm not great at math. That's the math that I did. So we're going to have to live with it. Anyways, 1-16, losing 15 straight. It's just not, it's not a good look. There's a lot of people we can blame. There's a lot of people we can talk about. And so we're going to kind of go through some of the reasons why they're struggling. We're going to start with the biggest person that people are kind of looking at, and that is Silas. Their head coach. He, of course, came into the fold last season before Russell Westbrook and James Harden were traded. He thought he was going to be coaching a contender. He got put in a rebuilding team. I felt bad for him because you go from trying to compete for a championship in your first real season to being the head coach of a tanking team, and head coaches of tanking teams rarely make it out to the other side of the tank without being fired, or they get like a season or two and then they're cut if they don't immediately perform once the team decides, okay, tanking's over, let's try to compete. And so Silas, as a first-time head coach, was thrown into the fray. He was thrown into a really difficult situation. And then coming into this year, Rockets fans, and it seemed like a lot of people thought the Rockets, because they got a guy in Jalen Green that many people thought was going to be the rookie of the year, they thought he could come in and immediately score around 20 points per game. Kevin Porter Jr. was a really exciting piece at the end of last season, scored 50 in a game. He looked like maybe he could try and be their point guard of the future. They got Alperen Şengün, who looked really fun and exciting in the Summer League. Usman Garuba and Josh Christopher, who are two fun rookies. Throw that in with Christian Wood, who was pretty solid last season when he did play. Eric Gordon, who's a solid vet. And people were like, this Rockets team could make a play-in push. They could be better than a tanking team. And now here they are, 1-16. And of course, when all of those things, people are kind of looking at all these different things, the first person that you look at is Silas, the head coach. I don't think this is all Silas's fault. He comes into this season, once again, it's a tanking team. They're bad. He's trying to balance playing vets who are trying to build up their trade value, like an Eric Gordon, who the Rockets have kind of seemingly been trying to move on from in a while. They're without John Wall, someone who now it looks like he's getting upset that he's not playing in Houston. A lot of people, me included, were under the impression that John Wall was kind of okay with the situation, that it maybe was kind of a mutual thing, and now he was tweeting out like facts, retweeting or quote tweeting people saying that like, oh, this is unfair to John Wall. So that situation is kind of a mess. You've got to play a bunch of 19-year-olds. You've got to balance it with the vets. It's really difficult to be the coach of a team that isn't really trying to be good, that doesn't have a lot of solid established talent right now. It's a tough balance to make. That doesn't mean he's absolved of all fault though, because I do think there are a lot of things that he's doing wrong, and I don't know if they're all his fault. There is an entire possibility that guys in the front office are looking at this Rockets team and they're like, hey, these are the guys we want you to play. These are the guys we want you to mix in for like trade value as well as development of young players. It's very possible. But from what I'm seeing right now, he's not doing a very good job of making rotations. There are some nights, like the other night, Rockets fans held a huge space on Twitter. If you don't know what Twitter spaces are, it's like a big chat room full of different Twitter accounts, and they were talking about Silas. I was trying to listen in to see kind of what some of their takes were because I figured I was going to be making a video about this sooner than later with how bad that they've been. And a lot of them were complaining that Daniel Tice was playing a lot of minutes compared to Alperen Şengün, who only played 5 the other night. He did play more in tonight's loss to the Boston Celtics, but the other night only playing 5 minutes. He really shouldn't be doing that. He should be playing more minutes. On the Tice thing, I don't think playing Tice is the reason why they're so bad. Tice has been okay on the season. He's not been anything phenomenal, but they did just sign him to a big contract. They're not just going to like sit him. Maybe they look to move and trade him once he's able to be traded on December 15th. But for right now, they're going to play him, because if they just sit him, then no team's going to trade for that contract if he's just sitting on the bench. We're seeing that with John Wall, given John Wall's contract is much more egregious, but you know. Also, talking about how, like, what does it look like? Like, which players should he start? Daniel House started, even though he's been horrible so far this season. One Rockets fan was like, he's got to be trolling us. He's got to be doing this on purpose. So Silas is not absolved of all fault. I don't think he's as much to blame as many people think he is. He hasn't done a good job. He hasn't been a good coach so far this season, but he is not the reason why solely that they're 1-6 team. Some of the issues include the fact that they've got no real facilitator on this roster. They don't have anyone to play make. They're not a good defensive team, so they can't really do much on either end of the ball. Offensively, like I said, no really real facilitator. Kevin Porter Jr., they're trying him out at point guard, but he, at least last time I checked, he was averaging right around the same amount of assists as turnovers, so he's not doing a good job of that so far. He is still very young, and there's so much time for him to learn the role. I personally don't really see him as a point guard going into the future. Point guard is a position that I feel like you kind of have to have kind of a feel for. You can, find your way eventually, but he just doesn't feel like he can be their franchise point guard, maybe a 2 or a 3, but I don't really see him as their point guard going forward. I just don't think he's good enough of a facilitator, and he doesn't quite have the passing vision. Could I be wrong? Yes, but from what I've seen from him so far, I know it's early, but he does not look like that kind of player to me. Jalen Green, who is supposed to be, like I mentioned, a Rookie of the Year candidate, has come out really flat so far. He's had advanced metrics hate him. His efficiency has not quite been there. He's going to be fine. He's not a bust or anything like that. It's tough to be a score-first guard coming into the league. It's very rare that guys come in and are immediately putting up 20 points per game like a lot of people thought he could. Being a really hype prospect, there have been really huge expectations on him, and he has not managed to meet those, causing a lot of people to overreact. He's going to be fine. Cade Cunningham right now is another guy that was in that situation, and he's currently figuring it out right now for Detroit. He had a triple-double the other night. His three-point percentage is way up. Jalen Green's going to figure it out. All good rookies do, and he will figure things out. But for right now, he is a big reason why they haven't been great. He was supposed to be their main source of offense, and if he can't score, things aren't happening. There's no facilitation, like I mentioned, which is another problem. Jalen Green has to create most of his shots. You see some rookies come in with like a known facilitator next to them. For example, Evan Mobley is having a great season offensively because while he is talented offensively, he also has great facilitator in Ricky Rubio and a solid one in Darius Garland. He has guys that can get him the ball. When you're a score-first player like Jalen Green, you can go and get your own bucket every now and again, but if you don't have anyone to make those buckets a little bit easier for you, your efficiency is going to plummet, especially if you're a first-year player. Christian Wood has not been good. He's been pretty poor so far this season. His three-point percentage is very low. It's at like the low 30s, like 31, 32%. He's not scoring the balls efficiently from the field either. It's one of the lowest we've seen from him in a little bit. His free throw percentage is at like 50%. He keeps tweeting out things that are mad. You've got Eric Gordon, who is complaining about the coach on Twitter, liking tweets about like, why is he our coach? Alperen Şengün's dad is complaining. There's just so much wrong right now with the Houston Rockets. They're kind of a disaster at the moment. And honestly, that's not the worst thing. If you're a Rockets fan, you're mad about this, you're hoping to be better. I know you want to see your team play good basketball, and even if they're losing games, you want to see guys like Jalen Green, Christian Wood, Kevin Porter Jr., Şengün, guys that you see as part of your future succeed. That's supposed to be the fun part of a rebuild. You watch these young guys grow and get better, but they haven't grown or get better. You've seen Christian Wood regress, and now a lot of guys across the league have been regressing between the increased physicality, the new ball. There was a lot of adjustment period for a guy like Christian Wood. I think he's going to be fine, but now you have to kind of wonder, do they look to move on from him before maybe his trade value gets worse because it's already less than it was previously? Do they maybe look to move on from him, make Alperen Şengün the starting center, move Daniel Tice to the bench? There's so many different things that they could go with this direction. I don't think they're going to fire Stephen Silas. I think that's just kind of a bad look if you fire him at 1-16, 17 games into what is supposed to be a rebuilding season. Whether or not people thought they could make the play-in, this is not a season where they're trying to contend. So this is a season where they're trying to continue to get more assets by being bad, having a good draft pick, and that's what they're going to have so far. Ultimately, in the long term, this long losing streak and being one of the worst, they're on pace right now to be the worst team of all time. I don't think they're going to be because they haven't played a ton of bad teams yet. They've played mostly teams over 500, although they did lose to the Thunder pretty badly a couple games ago, which is not a good sign for them. So I don't think the Rockets are going to be the worst team of all time, but they are going to be historically bad if they keep this pace up. So someone's gonna have to answer for that. I know Rockets fans are probably feeling really bad right now. I get that. The Thunder almost lost 20 games in a row, which the Rockets did last season, but the Thunder lost a lot of games last season. It never feels good when you watch your team lose a lot, but you've got to look at the long-term picture, and I do think that there is a feasible way to the Rockets figuring things out. Maybe not this season, but next season I think could be a big one. Jalen Green eventually will snap out of this slump. But other than that, they've got to figure out what they're doing with Christian Wood. Alperen Şengün, how is he going to get more playing time? Is Kevin Porter Jr. really your long-term option at the point guard? And if not, do you look at that in the draft? A lot of questions to be answered. I don't have a lot of those answers, but Rockets right now are in the mud. Moving on from also for the Celtics, shout out to Jason Tatum. He's got 30 points in I think 4 straight games now, so he's hooping. Next, I'll move on to the Sixers-Kings game. I was going to talk about the Thunder game next, but I'll save that for third, I think. What I want to talk about in this game is how Luke Walton has been fired. I never made a video on that because I was just kind of busy, and it happened on Football Sunday. The Kings tried to hide it from the public eye, disguising it between NFL football because they made the announcement like right at 1 p.m. Eastern time when the football games for the day started. So once again, the Kings being sneaky, but Luke Walton is finally gone. The Kings do lose their first game to the Sixers. In Luke Walton's absence, Alvin Gentry is their new head coach. Alvin Gentry, I can't remember. But the Kings losing to the 76ers. Yes, you heard that right. Not the 76ers, the 7 Sixers, because the Sixers had 7 guys that were in their layup line tonight. They did end up playing 8, which is, an improvement, but Tyrese Maxey with 24, he continues to be a hooper. 23 rebounds from Andre Drummond, who murdered them on the glass. 15 from Thibault, 12 from Georges Niang, 16 from Shake Milton, 11 from Isaiah Joe. I've said it before in the past, I'm going to say it again. The Sixers could put out 5 of you right now watching this video on the court, and the Sixers would have a good chance to win that game. They've just been competing night in, night out, despite being one of the most ravaged teams by COVID and injuries. The Sixers are going to be fine, and they're going to be scary once they get everyone healthy. For right now, they're trying to continue to fight. They're 10-8 on the season. For the Kings, 23 from De'Aaron Fox, 21-9 from Buddy Hield. First loss, they fired their head coach. I'm not going to give the Kings too much hate for this, but once again, they continue to be mediocre. Moving on from that, we've got the Thunder-Hawks game, like I mentioned. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander didn't play in this one, and so Josh Giddey had a chance to maybe get his first career triple-double. He's got about 4 months to get a triple-double, to be the youngest player to ever do it. I think he's going to get it. In this game, it looked like it was going to happen. At half, I believe he had like 9, 6, and 5, or 9, 6, and 6, or something like that. But then, in the second half, he just didn't play a ton of minutes. We started to get blown out, and our interim head coach, Dave Bliss, while, if you didn't know, our main head coach, Mark Daignault, is on leave. He's hanging out with his wife right now, who is she's expecting a kid any day. So we've got Dave Bliss, who is an assistant head coach, taking over right now, and he just didn't put Josh Giddey in until it was too late. He had 15, 7, and 8 on the game. He's going to get that triple-double soon enough. Ty Jerome, a beast off the bench, as he has been the last few games. 30 points for Trae Young and 4 rebounds, 6 assists. Just a crazy effort from him as the Thunder lose this game by 12. Moving on from that, the Brooklyn Nets beating the Cleveland Cavaliers, 27, 6, and 9 for Kevin Durant. You got 6 rebounds and 14 assists from James Harden, who had a great game. But the guy I really want to give a shout out to on this Nets team is LaMarcus Aldridge. Aldridge has been really, really good. And he came off that season where last year, we weren't sure if he was ever going to play again. He had that issue with his heart, and coming into this year, he stayed ready, he stayed conditioned, he had 21-11 in this game, and he's been a really solid plus for them. He's been a big pickup. Their offseason pickups like Patty Mills with 17, LaMarcus Aldridge, Cam Thomas had 11 in this game. They played a really big role in this win. The Cleveland Cavaliers, once again, without Evan Mobley, without Colin Sexton, put up a good fight. 20-15 from Jared Allen, who had a revenge game. 24 and 11 assists from Darius Garland, to 16, 7, and 5 from Ricky Rubio. 8 and 12 from Kevin Love, who I continue to forget is still on this roster. The Nets getting a win, and they're now first in the Eastern Conference. And finally, the Grizzlies-Jazz game. The Jazz have been kind of disappointing recently. They're still 11-6. They're still doing very well, but dropping this game to the Memphis Grizzlies. 26 points from Jaren Jackson Jr., 32, 4, and 7 from Ja Morant, 28 from Desmond Bane, who's having a really good season, 24 on the Jazz side from Bojan Bogdanovic, 23 and 13 from Rudy Gobert, 18, 6, and 8 from Donovan Mitchell, who was pretty poor down the stretch, 19 and 8 from Mike Conley. And this game ending on a 3 from Jaren Jackson Jr. to give the Grizzlies a lead at the end of the game. Just a big shot from him. He is the X factor for this Grizzlies team. If they want to go anywhere in the future, they need Triple J to get things going. He was great. He gave Rudy Gobert some fits tonight, and Rudy Gobert is an incredible defensive player. So Jaren Jackson Jr. having a couple plays where he just looked like he knew how to get around Rudy Gobert. That's big. He's always been a good defender, but if he keeps those fouls down, continues to score, he doesn't have to score 26, but just becomes a consistent scoring threat like he kind of was tonight, it's going to be huge for the Grizzlies, and it really makes their ceiling a lot higher. So those are my thoughts on the games from today. Like I said, a lot of blowouts, so I'm not going to talk about any more. Let me know what you think about the Houston Rockets and just what were your takeaways from any of the games today. I appreciate y'all watching. If you made it this far, drop a free John Wall in the comment section below to let me know you made it to the end. I appreciate y'all watching. I will see you all later. Everyone, say it back.